I still remember the burning sting of the antiseptic, the harsh fluorescent light overhead, and the echo of my father's voice as he hung up on me. "Why are you making such a fuss? You're not dying. Don't call in a panic. Claire needs support urgently now." I was lying on a gurney in the ER, bleeding, barely able to breathe after a car crash. My leg felt shattered. My ribs screamed, but none of it compared to the fracture in my chest, the one caused by the man who was supposed to protect me. He left me there alone because my sister had a meltdown over a failed job interview. When he finally showed up hours later, the look on his face said it all. He had no idea what I'd become in his absence, and he certainly didn't expect what I was about to do next. The crash had happened in a blur, tires screeching, glass exploding, and then silence. When I woke up, I couldn't move my leg. I tasted blood in my mouth and realized I was being lifted onto a stretcher. Paramedics were speaking their voices, urgent but calm. "We've got a pulse compound fracture, possible internal bleeding. Let's move." I faded in and out on the ride to the hospital. The next time I opened my eyes, I was under a fluorescent ceiling, shaking, half covered by a thin, scratchy blanket. A nurse spoke to me, kind but hurried, asking if I could feel my toes. I could barely. Then I reached for my phone. The screen was cracked, just like me. I scrolled to the one number that had always meant "Help Dad," my emergency contact. The first call went to voicemail. The second rang, then cut off. On the third try, he answered. His voice was clipped, already annoyed. "Stella, what is it?" "I'm in the middle of something. Claire's having a moment." "Okay." I blinked at the ceiling, swallowed against the taste of iron. "Dad, I'm in the emergency room. I was in a car accident. I think my leg is broken." He cut me off. "Are you dying?" What I said, "Are you dying?" Because Claire just bombed an interview she really wanted and she's spiraling. She needs support right now. I'm trying to keep her together. This isn't the time for drama. "Dad, I'm alone," I whispered. "They think I might need surgery." He sighed. Not in fear, not in worry, but in annoyance. "You're strong. You'll be fine. Don't call in a panic. Claire needs me now." Then the line went dead. I stared at my phone for a long time, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Not the accident, not the pain, but that my father, my only living parent, had chosen my sister's emotional crisis over my physical trauma. I laid there, the antiseptic stinging my nose, the beep of machines, the only reassurance I had. The nurse returned, this time gentler, and asked if there was anyone coming. I nodded, even though I wasn't sure anymore. I kept checking the door, waiting for him to appear, but no one came, and in that waiting, something shifted in me. For the first time, I realized just how alone I really was. Not just in that room, but in this family. As I lay in that sterile hospital room, numbed by both painkillers and disbelief, the truth started to bloom inside me like a slow, burning bruise. This wasn't new. It had always been like this. Claire, the golden child. Claire, the delicate one. Claire who needed extra care, extra patience, extra attention. And me, I was the strong one. The one who didn't need babysitting, the independent spirit. That's what they used to call it when I got overlooked. Stella's doing fine. Let's focus on Claire. She's just more sensitive. I thought back to birthdays, how mine were quiet dinners while Claire got backyard parties, string lights, and 3-tiered cakes. I remembered my high school graduation, how my dad missed the ceremony because Claire had a panic attack over a B- on her final exam. He said, "You understand, right?" She really needed me that day, and I did understand. For years I told myself I did. Even in college, when I took on 2 jobs to pay tuition, he sent Claire rent money and bought her a new laptop because hers made her anxious. When I mentioned mine was falling apart, he suggested I save up or check Craigslist. The double standard was constant, so subtle at times that I gaslit myself into believing I imagined it. But lying in that hospital bed, staring at the blank white ceiling, I knew better. There had been the time Claire got drunk and backed Dad's car into a neighbor's fence. He called it a learning experience, but when I once forgot to refill the gas before returning the car, he lectured me for an hour about responsibility and respect. Claire had always been the emotional one, the creative soul. She switched majors 3 times, moved cities twice, failed internships, and every time Dad was there with hugs, money, pep talks. Me. I landed a stable job, paid my own bills, stayed out of trouble, and somehow that made me less worthy of his attention because I didn't need him until now. Until my car spun off the road, and I needed him not as a provider but just as a father to show up, to sit next to me, to care. And he didn't. He chose Claire again. Over and over she demanded and received. I endured and was ignored. Even when I was the one on the table, even when the doctors were discussing possible surgery and internal bleeding, even then I thought about all the times I'd reassured myself with, he just worries about her more because she struggles. But now I realize something even heavier. He never actually saw me. He only saw what I could handle and assumed I'd handle it alone. That night, lying with a fractured body and a newly shattered heart, I let the denial fall away. The fog lifted, and in its place, something colder and clearer took root. This wasn't love. This was neglect dressed up as expectation. I used to believe that if I worked hard enough, stayed quiet enough, gave enough, I'd finally earn his love. Not just approval love, but growing up, that love was always conditional. If I succeeded, it was expected. If Claire simply tried, it was praised. When I brought home straight A's, Dad would glance at my report card, nod, and say, "Good. That's how it should be." But when Claire passed a class she'd been failing, he took her out to dinner, posted about it on Facebook, and told the world how resilient she was. I learned early on that competence wasn't celebrated, it was exploited. He leaned on me to help around the house, to manage bills when he traveled, to keep things steady. Meanwhile, Claire floated through life with a safety net woven from our father's endless second chances. Once, when she ran up nearly 2-0 in credit card debt by accident, he bailed her out, then asked me if I could cover the utilities for the next 2 months to help rebalance the household. And I did it because I thought that's what love looked like. Picking up the slack, being the dependable one, always saying, "I understand," while swallowing resentment like bitter medicine. But I didn't understand. Not really. Not until I was lying in a hospital gown with stitches across my side and bruises blooming down my arms, and my father told me plainly, coldly, that I was being dramatic, that my sister's failed job interview was more urgent than my pain, that I wasn't dying so I shouldn't have called. I remember staring at the wall after that call, trying to process the shame. The worst part wasn't even his rejection, it was how familiar it felt. This wasn't a one-time betrayal. It was the culmination of years of being invisible unless I was useful, years of playing the role of the strong daughter, the self-sufficient one, the easy kid. That role had become my prison. I had taught them how to treat me, not by speaking but by enduring, by never asking for more, by always stepping aside for Claire even when I was bleeding. Even now it struck me then that if I didn't change the script, no one would. That maybe the most radical thing I could do was stop trying. Stop performing strength for a man who only valued me when I needed nothing. Stop bleeding quietly just to protect the comfort of others. Stop calling it love when it was really control wrapped in praise. Lying there, I realized this wasn't just a car crash, it was a breaking point. And maybe finally, that was exactly what I needed. By the time night fell and I was moved to a quieter room in the trauma wing, the hospital had become a strange kind of sanctuary, cold and impersonal, but still more comforting than the hollow warmth I'd grown used to at home. The nurse dimmed the lights, adjusted the blanket around my cast, and asked softly, "Is your family coming?" I gave the only answer I could. No. She didn't press, just nodded and said, "Let us know if you need anything." But I did need something I had never let myself ask for before. Protection, not from pain. I could endure pain, but from the people who kept calling it love while watching me break. That's when I reached for my phone again. My hand was steadier now. I scrolled past Dad, past Claire, and tapped on Miss Eliza Grant, my lawyer. I'd worked with her years ago on a housing matter. Nothing major, but she was competent, calm, and kind. And most importantly, she didn't look at me like I was overreacting. When she picked up, I expected to fall apart. Instead, I surprised myself. Eliza, it's Stella. I'm in the hospital. Pause. Are you safe? She asked instantly. Yes, physically yes, but I need help. Legal help. I explained everything. The accident, the call, the dismissal, the years of financial help I'd given my father and sister. Thousands I'd quietly transferred over the years under the guise of being the responsible one. Her voice didn't waver. Okay, I understand. What do you want to do? I want to cut them off, I said. The words came out like a confession but felt like a release. I want to make sure they can't access anything. I want to revoke everything I've ever signed. Power of attorney. Will beneficiaries' financial access all of it? She didn't ask why. She didn't need to. Instead, she said, do you have documentation of the support you've given them? I nodded reflexively. Yes, I started saving records months ago, bank transfers, emails, even some texts. I hadn't known why I'd started doing it. Maybe a quiet part of me had seen this moment coming. Good, she said. That will help. I'll come to the hospital in the morning. We'll draft everything. You don't need to do this alone. And for the first time in a long time, I believed her. When we ended the call, I sank back into the pillows. The machines around me beeped steady and sure. I wasn't just trying to survive anymore. I was choosing myself, the girl who had always come second, the woman who had always swallowed her voice. She was done performing strength for people who weaponized it. And for the first time, the silence didn't feel like abandonment. It felt like space. Space to breathe, space to begin. Eliza arrived the next morning just as the sun began slipping through the narrow blinds. She was dressed in a sharp navy suit, hair pulled back, briefcase in hand, a quiet force of clarity amid the hospital's haze of beeping machines and antiseptic air. "Morning, Stella," she said with a small, firm smile. "Let's get to work." She pulled a chair up beside the bed and opened her laptop while I unlocked my phone and handed over a flash drive I had tucked into my overnight bag. It held ends of quiet preparation folders labeled with bank statements, screenshots, PayPal transfers, emails, texts. I hadn't even realized how much I'd kept, but now that it was all laid out in one place, it was overwhelming. Transfer after transfer. 300 here, 600 there. $1,000 check with the memo line. Claire's therapy, co-A rent, groceries, repairs, bailouts. Most of the money hadn't even been requested politely. It had come as expectations, demands wrapped in guilt. Claire's struggling again. "Can you help? I don't want her moving back in with me. Can you spot her car payment this month just until she gets on her eat?" Except Claire had never found her footing, and I had never stopped paying. Eliza's fingers moved quickly across her keyboard as she compiled totals, organized messages, and matched requests to transfers. When she turned the screen toward me, the number at the bottom made my stomach twist. Almost 6 figures gone over 5 years. It could have been a down payment on a home my student loans wiped clean. A business started, a safety net built. Instead, it was the trail of quiet self-eraser I had left behind. The piece. Eliza looked up. "This isn't just generosity. This is a pattern of financial dependence, and from the emotional content of these messages, it borders on coercion." I swallowed. "Do I look foolish?" "No," she said plainly. "You look like someone who's been conditioned to believe love is earned through sacrifice." That sentence cracked something in me because that's exactly what it was. Every time I paid, every time I gave in, I wasn't just avoiding conflict. I was chasing connection, hoping that maybe his time he'd say thank you, that maybe this time Claire would appreciate me, maybe this time I'd be seen. Instead, they only learned that I'd never say no until now. Eliza guided me through the next steps, revoking the general power of attorney I'd given my dad, Jay. In case years ago, removing both him and Claire as beneficiaries from my will and updating all access to my bank accounts. "I'll handle notification," she said. "It'll get messy, but we'll keep it clean." I nodded. "I also recommend setting up a trust just for you," she added. "You're not just cutting them off, you're reclaiming your autonomy legally and emotionally." As I signed the documents she prepared, I felt an ache that had nothing to do with my fractured body. It was grief, sharp and real. Grief for the version of me who had kept trying. The daughter who thought maybe next time he'd show up. The sister who thought maybe if she gave enough, Claire would change. But as the final signature dried, that grief made space for something new. Resolve. Because now I wasn't waiting for permission. I wasn't begging for love. I was drawing the line, not out of spite, but out of survival. The hospital room had settled into a strange kind of stillness by late afternoon. The Ford drip hummed quietly beside me. My leg throbbed beneath layers of gauze and plaster, but the pain had dulled, eclipsed by the pounding in my chest as I waited. They were coming. The hospital had finally reached my father when I listed him as next of kin during intake. I hadn't expected him to arrive right away, but Eliza, ever prepared, stayed by my side just in case. "I guess they'll come when they think they can make a scene," she said, calm as ever. "They're not used to being shut out." She was right. At 4:47 p.m., the door opened. My father entered first, looking as though he'd rushed, or at least wanted to look like he had. His tie was loose, his face set in what might have passed as concern to anyone who didn't know him. Claire trailed behind oversized sunglasses. Perched on her head, her expression teetering between annoyance and wounded pride, and then their eyes landed on Eliza. Immediately, the warmth vanished. "Shed, who is this?" Dad demanded, pointing at her with the subtlety of a freight train. Eliza stood smoothly. "Good evening, I'm Eliza Grant, Stella's attorney." Claire's lips curled. "An attorney? Oh, come on." I sat up, a little pain shooting through my side. "Sit down if you want to talk or walk out. Your choice." Dad's jaw flexed. "Is this about earlier, Stella? You can't seriously be mad. You're not. You weren't dying. Claire was in a really bad place." "Over a job interview?" I asked. My voice was flat cold. "You left me bleeding in the ER because Claire got rejected by LinkedIn." Claire gasped. "I was having a panic attack. You were disappointed," I snapped. "I was in surgery prep alone." My dad raised his voice. "You're being dramatic again. You always turn everything into a crisis." That line again, it hit like a slap. "Brr, Liza," I said, still staring at them. "Would you mind playing the message?" She nodded, took out her phone, tapped twice. The room filled with the harsh buzz of a speaker. "Why are you making such a fuss? You're not dying. Don't call in a panic. Claire needs support urgently now." Claire's voice came through next, faint but clear. "You're so self-centered, Stella. Can't you see I'm spiraling?" Then the call cut off. Silence, utter damning silence. "Mybrer." Arthur looked stunned. Claire turned pale. "Did you record us?" He growled. "Yes, after you hung up on me. Something told me I might need proof when you started spinning the story." My father's face flushed red. "This is insane. You've lost your mind." "No," I said, steady now. "I finally found it." Eliza stepped forward, papers in hand. "As of today, Stella has formally revoked all financial access and responsibilities toward either of you. This includes power of attorney, shared accounts, and any future legal or ethical authorizations. You are no longer entitled to anything connected to her name or resources." Dad snatched the paper from her hand. "You can't do this." "She can," Eliza said coolly. "And she has," Claire lunged forward. "But I need help. I'm looking for jobs. I can't go back to Mom's." "That's not my problem anymore," I said, voice like steel. "You've had years of lifelines. I was the one bleeding this time, and you still made it about you." "Your family," Dad shouted. "No, I said your blood. That's not the same thing." He stared at me, eyes wild. "After everything I did for you. You raised me to be responsible so I could fund your irresponsibility." "That's not parenting, that's dependency." They didn't argue after that. They just stared, stunned, sputtering, defeated. And when Eliza opened the door with a quiet nod, they walked out of my life. No more performances, no more pleading, just the cold, clean sound of a closing door. The silence they left behind wasn't peaceful. It was heavy like the air after a storm when the clouds haven't quite cleared, and everything feels drenched in aftermath." Eliza stayed a moment longer. She gently placed the signed documents into her folder, zipped it shut, and gave me a long, quiet look. "They'll push back," she said softly. "Emotionally, maybe publicly. Be prepared for anger masquerading as heartbreak." I nodded, even though my stomach was already twisting, and she was right. They didn't wait long. That night, while I was still on 4 antibiotics and painkillers, I got the first text from Claire. "I can't believe you blindsided us like that. You've always been jealous. You wanted to humiliate me in front of him." A minute later, "You're not a victim. You just like playing one now that it gets you sympathy." Then my father, "This is a betrayal after all we did for you. I paid for your braces, your summer camp, your childhood, and this is how you repay me." Each message chipped at the shell I'd started to build, but I didn't respond. Eliza had told me, "Silence is power, let yo. Or attorney speak for you. Let your boundaries speak louder than any reply." So I muted their numbers. I let the phone buzz itself into irrelevance, but it didn't stop there. 2 days after being discharged, hobbling at home on crutches, I opened Facebook and saw it. A vague post from my father. "Sometimes the ones you love most hurt you the deepest, especially when they forget where they came from." Dozens of pitying comments followed. Aunt Lorraine posted a comment dripping with passive aggression. "We raised our kids better than that. Loyalty is everything." I didn't respond. But what stunned me wasn't their smear campaign. It was who stayed silent and who didn't. My cousin Jules, who I hadn't seen since a family barbecue 3 years ago, sent me a private message. "Hey, I just want you to know I believe you. I saw how they treated you. Claire was always the storm and you were expected to be the umbrella. That wasn't fair." I cried harder at that message than I had at any point in the hospital because someone saw me finally clearly without me having to explain. Then there was Emily from work who dropped off groceries without asking, and my friend Nora who texted, "You don't owe anyone your survival." Piece by piece, I realized I wasn't alone. The people who really cared didn't need an explanation or justification. They didn't twist my pain into drama or gaslight me with fake nostalgia. They just showed up. And slowly, I began to show up for myself, too. I returned to therapy. I talked, really talked, not to defend my past, but to unpack it, to understand why I'd stayed so long in a system that fed on my silence. My therapist said something I'll never forget. "You weren't loved for who you were. You were rewarded for what you gave. That's not love. That's transaction." It hit like truth always does. Sudden, sharp, liberating. I started to reclaim more than my finances. I reclaimed my identity. I opened a separate savings account just for me. I updated my emergency contacts. I blocked Claire and my father on every platform. It wasn't rage that guided me. It was peace, the kind that comes after a storm strong enough to uproot everything that was never stable to begin with. Months passed. My leg healed slowly. The cast gave way to a brace, then a cane, and eventually just a faint ache when it rained. But what took longer to heal was the quiet wound I carried in my chest, the kind no X-ray could show, the kind carved by a father's silence, a sister's entitlement, a lifetime of being needed, but never truly seen. And yet, I was healing. Each small act of self-respect stitched me back together. I went for walks alone and didn't feel hollow. I cooked dinner for myself and didn't feel the need to share it with someone just to feel useful. I laughed not because someone else needed me to stay strong, but because I felt light enough too. Claire and my father never apologized, not once, but they stopped trying to reach me after Eliza formally served them the last round of legal notices. Their absence, once terrifying, became a gift. I filled that silence with people who showed up without being asked, friends who brought over soup without needing thanks, a colleague who helped me with my work transition, even my neighbor, Mrs. Lively, who knocked once a week with flowers from her garden. It was in those simple gestures I found a truth that no family courtroom or argument could teach. Family isn't who shares your last name. It's who shows up when the lights go out. It's who believes your pain without proof. It's who never makes you apologize for needing them. So to anyone out there still waiting for a parent to see you, still trying to prove your worth through sacrifice, hear this. You don't have to bleed to earn love. You are already enough. And the day you stop begging is the day you finally begin to heal. Because sometimes silence isn't weakness, it's justice wrapped in grace. Silent revenge.